All right, Rabbi, say good morning. Let us begin by thanking our sponsors for this morning. Sure to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Nissan. To thank Jerry and Abby Applebaum for dedicating all the Sherman Drushos this month in memory of Basya Bas Chaim and David Ben Avram. To thank Doctors Paul and Linda Weinberg for dedicating the Shurim this month in memory of Mordechai Yehoshua, Ben Peretz Moshe, Miriam. To thank Paul and Kathy Pollack for dedicating the Shurim this month in zchus of refuah sheileimah for Donna Baker-Matson. Teri Czinn for dedicating the Shurim this month with gratitude to Hashem for their grandson Bunim Tzvi Hersch Naftali Tilson, for dedicating the Shurim this month with Hakar Satov to his friend Benjamin Wohl, and with wishes of a Chag Kasher V'Sameach to the entire Shir. Avraham Shaindy Kelman for dedicating the Shurim this month, commemoration of the yahrzeit of Sara Braina Bas Yehoshua Heschel. We hope that on the merit of our Talmud Torah. Oh, and I'm sorry, today's Daf Yomi sponsor, Richard and Judy Nudelman, in memory of Temmy Schwartz, Judy's mother, whose Levaya is today. You know, the Neshama should have an aliyah in the family, should have an chaver. So with that, let us begin. So today's daf is Lamed Ches. Today's daf is Lamed Ches. Sorry. Today's daf is Lamed Ches. We are picking up, we have a lot to do today. So we are picking up in Meretz Hashem on Lamed Zayin Amid Beis, and we left off right before the lines get wide. Tana Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer. So it is 4 lines before the lines get wide on the daf. So Tana Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer. Lo yisa adam ishto v'daito l'garsha. A person should not go ahead and marry a woman with the intention of divorcing her. In other words, that when a person goes ahead and commits to a marriage, he should remain committed to that particular relationship. Shnei Emar, because the pasuk says, Al tachrosh are'echa ra'ah v'hu yoshev levetach itach. The pasuk says actually quite a beautiful pasuk in Mishlei. Literally, again, do not go ahead and come up. Tachrosh literally means like plow, but do not create, right? Do not plow, do not plan negative things against your friend, and he sits securely with you. So the idea is, again, in this particular context, if you marry someone, and again, that marriage comes with the promise of continuity, that marriage comes with the promise of security, do not go ahead and undermine that security, ultimately by proactively planning to divorce that individual. Okay, incredible Gemara. So we'll say, so now we come to a number of very interesting cases here, where halacha l'maisa, we'll say in general, by the way, it's a beautiful yisod, because what it also speaks about is the nature of trust in relationships. If a person puts their trust in you for a relationship, don't betray that trust. Don't betray that trust. And in general, again, that's true on many different levels, and how careful we have to be with all of our relationships. Of course, it goes without saying marriage, but even otherwise, just to be an upstanding person in every relationship, people do things to us, say things to us that we don't like. And it's so easy to just react to that. But recognizing that when you're in a relationship, again, whichever relationship it might be, the most important thing that a person can bring to a relationship is a sense of continuity and security. See, even when the other party in the relationship does something you don't like, you don't have to respond in kind. An incredible yisod. So the Gemara goes weiter. Safek v'yavam. So we'll say a number of very interesting cases here. So remember again, we're operating in the general, the same cases that we've been dealing with up until this point in time, which is Reuven and Shimon brothers. Reuven passes away, leaves behind the wife Rachel. Shimon does yibum. Turns out that Rachel is pregnant. Now the case we're focusing on, that Rachel gives birth to a viable baby. What's the sheilah here? Is this a 7th-month baby for Reuven or a 9-month baby for Shimon? Sorry, it's just the opposite, right? Is this a 9-month baby for Reuven, the deceased brother, or a 7th-month baby now for Shimon the Yavam? So again, obviously that's a question we're not going to figure out. So the Mishnah tells us, ultimately again, Shimon and Rachel have to split, right? Because again, it's a safek yibum, safek eshes ach. They have to bring an asham talui, but the child is 100% kosher. Remember again, like we saw in yesterday's daf, can even become the Kohen Gadol. Now we're going to deal with some very interesting cases over here about Yerusha and about how to deal with Yerusha. So we'll say, now watch this. Safek v'yavam. So we'll say the safek, who we're referring to in this case, is the child born to Shimon and Rachel. We're going to call him, his name is Safek, right? Why is his name Safek? We're not sure. Again, is he Reuven's son or is he Shimon's son? Again, he's good to go either way. But Lamaisa, he's a Safek. So Safek, v'yavim shava lachlok b'nichsei misna. So let's just imagine the following case. Safek, and Shimon, surviving brother, come to divide up the estate of Reuven. So what happens? Safek Amar Ana Bar Misnahi, who, first white line, the Safek says, I'm the son of Reuven, so the estate is mine. V'nichsei didehu. The Yavam Amar, Shimon says, At beroi didi at, v'leslecha v'lomidi b'nichsei. So what does Shimon say? Shimon says, you're my son. Because you're my son, what rights do you have in Reuven's property? And the answer is, none at all. So the Yavam, Shimon is claiming the estate is totally mine. Safek is claiming the estate is totally mine. I'm the son of Reuven. So what's the halacha? We'll say, Havi Maman Amuto B'Safek, U'Maman Hamuto B'Safek Cholkin. So we'll say there's a general principle that whenever you have Mamon Hamuto B'Safek, which means two claimants, right? Two people claiming the same money, and neither has a clearer claim, more decisive claim than the other, ultimately, again, you split it, right? We'll say this goes back to paradigmatic case, Shnayim Ochsim B'Talis, right? Ze Omar Kula Shali, the Ze Omer Kula Shali. What's the halacha? Yachloku. Again, whenever you have Mamon Hamuto B'Safek, and again, I will say, to be clear, if one party presents proof, that's something different. Here, they're both just lodging a claim with absolutely no way to back up their claim. Both legitimate claims, cholkin. Great. Next case. Listen to this case. In this case over here, Shimon passes away as well. Now, before Shimon passed away, they never had a chance to divide up Reuven's estate. Right? So what happens? So therefore, again, now, the children of Shimon, let's say Shimon had other sons, right? The children of Shimon and Safek are coming to divide up the estate of Reuven. So Safek Amrahu Gavra Bar Misnahu. So the Safek says, Reuven was my father, and therefore again the estate is mine. So the Gemara says, V'nichsei didehu, b'nei Yavam Amri, at achinu at, uman sahu de'islacha bahadon. And the brothers, right, the sons of Shimon say to Safek, what do they say to Safek? No. You're our brother. You're Shimon's son. As such, we all share in the estate of Reuven equally. So what's the halacha? Sara Braina, sheileimah. So it's really a fascinating case. So remember again, in this case, so Shimon predeceases his children, and assuming he has Safek, and we'll call it two other sons. They never divided up the estate of Reuven. So Safek says, Reuven was my father, the estate is mine. The brothers, right, the sons of Shimon say, no, you're our brother. Our father inherited the estate, and we all share in the estate equally. Let's say there's three brothers, we all get 1/3 of Reuven's estate. So the Imam wants to suggest, this is a Mishnah. What's the Mishnah? This is not. Hu eni yoresh also, vehem yorshim also. So we'll say this is actually a similar case, but a little bit of a different kind of case, where halacha l'maisa, again, you also have two groups of brothers. And again, it's not sure who one of the brothers belongs to. So the Gemara says, he inherits them, they do not inherit him. To which the Gemara says, V'hacha ifcha. Here's a different kind of case. Hasam amrile aisi raya v'shakol. There they say, bring a raya that you're our brother and take your portion. Hacha amrlahu aisi raya v'shakolu. Here, he tells them, bring a raya and you're permitted to take. You're permitted to take a portion. Amr Mishashia, midami, hasam inhu vadai vi'ihu safek. How can you compare it? In the other case, ultimately again, they are a vadai and he is a safek. Hacha idi vi'idi safek. In this case, however, everyone has a safek claim. If you're going to compare this case to a Mishnah, that's the following case. So the Gemara says, L'safek u'bnei yavam shebo lachlok b'nichsei yavam. Gufei. Supposed to listen to this case. It can be comparable to the following case. Safek ubnei yavam shebola. Supposed to listen to this case. In this case, Shimon passes away, and now what happens? We're going to see this case more explicitly. Now what happens? Safek and the other sons of Shimon come to go ahead and divide up Shimon's estate. The Hassam Amrilei, there the brothers say to Safek, the sons say to Safek, I see raya da'achuna at v'shakol. Go ahead and bring a raya that you're our brother. and we'll give you a portion. Again, we're going to get into that case in just a moment. So I will say, so ultimately, again, I just want to point out over here, in all of these cases, pretty much the halakha is going to follow the same line, which is what? Yachloku. We're going to split. Because remember, again, in all of these cases, everybody is lodging legitimate claims. And the truth is, there's no way to positively ascertain who is correct. Whenever you have mamon hamutal b'safek, you split it. What was the next case? Safek u'bnei yavam shavah lachlok b'nichse yavam. Now, this is what we just mentioned before. So remember, in this case over here, Shimon passes away. So let's just go back for just a moment. The prior step in this case is, remember, the previous case was that, remember, Reuven passed away, obviously, right? And again, Shimon did Yibam with Rachel, right? Turns out that Rachel's pregnant. Rachel gave birth. We're not sure, again, is this Reuven's son, Shimon's son? Okay. Stage one is now, again, we'll call it, so now this kid's name is Safek. That's his name. Safek says to Shimon, right? They have to divide up Reuven's estate. So Safek says, I'm Reuven's son. Shimon says, you're my son. Right? Nafkamina is Safek saying Reuven's estate is mine. Shimon saying it's mine and you have no portion. Right? Again, what do we say in that case? Yachloku. Split it. Okay. Now we'll say, so keep that in mind. So now Reuven's estate already has been, what's the word? Not disposed of. There's a word. Distributed. Good, it's already been distributed. Right? So now again, how did the distribution work? Safek got half, Shimon got half. Good. Now Shimon dies. Now, I just want to point out, by the way, just you see something amazing? Families having fights over inheritance is not a new thing. It's existed for a very long time. Right? So ultimately now what happens? Shimon passes away. Oh, so now watch this. Remember again, there are two parties now involved in Shimon's estate. Who are the two parties? There's Safek, and now Shimon also has what? We'll call Shimon has two other sons. So that's this case. Safek u'bnei yavam sheba'u lachlok b'nichse yavam. So Safek and the other sons of Shimon come to divide up Shimon's estate. So what happens? Listen to this. Lebasar depala yavam b'nichse misna. And again, as I mentioned before, this is already after Shimon and Safek divided up Reuven's estate. Right? They already walked away. Each of them walked away with half of that estate. Watch this. B'nei yavam amri aisiraya da'achunaat v'shakol. So listen to this. So the brothers, the sons of Shimon, what do they say to Safek? You don't have a portion in our father's estate. You're not our brother. Bring her. You're Reuven's kid. And if you tell me that you're our brother, bring a raya. Bring a proof. Otherwise, what right do you have to Shimon's estate? Listen to this, Rabbi. Get ready for this. Amalu Safek. No problem. Manav shach. Iachusan ana havili min sabadaichu. Listen, if you're going to accept me as your brother, then give me a portion of Shimon's estate. Watch this, Rabbi say. V'i bar misna ana. And by the way, if you say I'm Reuven's kid, no problem. Havuli palga de palagavuchan ba'adoi. Give me back 50% of Reuven's estate that your father took. Right? Incredible. This is great, no? So Safek says, listen guys, you want to taina, I'm not your brother, that's fine. A little hurtful, I'm not going to lie. But that's fine. But then give me back my father's estate that I split with your father Shimon. Give me back the 50% of Reuven's estate. Incredible. We'll say, strong taina. So I'll say, now this opens up a very interesting discussion, which is, remember, Reuven's estate has already been. There's a name for it. No, when you execute, when you distribute it. Isn't there a legal term for this? I don't know. Okay, maybe not. Anyway, so I'll say. See, here's what's interesting about this: is Reuven's estate has already been dealt with, right? So now I'll say, what's going to be the fundamental sheilah? Can you reopen that distribution? Can you go back and reopen that? So I'll say, this is machlokes. Rabbi Abba Amarav. Kamdino. Rabbi Abba says no. Rabbi says no. Rav goes say Kamdino. If you look at Rashi, Kamdino, it's almost right across from Rashi. Acher shenas din benichse ameis ein ze yochel lachzer ula ara alehem umashu shah benichse ayavam oral Israel. I will say at the end of the day, Once the case is adjudicated, it's adjudicated. Kam dina means we don't go back and reopen cases. Right? We don't go back, and sometimes we do Belamaisa, again, in the distribution of an estate. Once it's done, it's done. Kam dina. We do not go back and re-examine it. Rabbi Yirmiyah Amar Hadir Dina. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, yes, we do. Yes, we do. So in a case like this, Einach Inami, we tell the sons of Shimon, guys, listen, you got a choice. If you don't want to give Safek a third of Shimon's estate and dividing up as an equal brother, that's your prerogative. But just know if you do that, we're going back and reopening then the case of the estate of Reuven. So I'll say a fundamental machlokes. So it must be that this machlokes ultimately, again, I will say similar to a case of Amon Rabban. I will say this is a great case. Great cases today. Nissan, listen to this. Misha halach l'medina sayva Abdullah derech sadehu. I will say here's the case. I went overseas. Now, just if you can imagine, by the way, I have a field. And it's actually an interesting configuration. My field is landlocked by other fields. Right? So if you can imagine, there are four, right? I have a field in the middle, and there are 4 fields around my field. So which means that the only way I can access my field is how? A right of way. Right? I have, which again is very common, I have a right of way agreement. Right? What's the problem? I went overseas, probably change of ownership in the surrounding fields. I don't remember where my right of way was. So I come back, I don't remember where my right of way was. So the Gemara says, Admon Omer, Yelich Bikitsara. So Admon says, you take the shortest way. We'll see what that means in just a moment. We'll say, take a look at Rashi. My field was encircled by other fields. Ultimately, again, I will say, so we're going to see. So Admon says, Derek Kitsara, the people who landlock my field should agree and come up with the ability to give me the shortest path to my field. Again, we'll finish in just a moment. The Chacham Nechum say, Yikach lo derech b'mei mana o yifrach ba'avir. The Chachamim say, buy a path for 100 mana or find a way to fly. Now what that means is the Chachamim say is, I'm stuck. I'm at a disadvantage because what do I have to do? I have to purchase a right of way. And by the way, how much do I have to pay for that right of way? Whatever they ask. So I am at a real disadvantage over here because again, I don't know where the right of way is. No one else knows where the right of way is. So the only way for me to get a right of way is literally again to purchase it. And halacha l'maisa, again, the expression is either pay whatever they're asking or go fly a kite. Right? Chazal's way of saying is learn to fly. In other words, go find a way to fly to your field. You don't have to need a right of way. So it's incredible. So literally again, I'm literally stuck because I need a right of way, have no real definitive claim on where that right of way was, and therefore I have to pay whatever they ask. Rashi says over here, actually not yet. So the Gemara says, and we ask, so I'm sorry, I said according to the Rabbanon, isn't Admon saying good? In other words, Rabbi saying, at the end of the day, see the Havamino over here is that it's one person who owns all 4 of the surrounding fields. Right? So I own the field in the middle, and we'll call him Reuven owns the surrounding fields. So Admon essentially says, listen, we'll call him Reuven. You have to give Silber, the interior guy, you got to give him a right of way. Because we'll say, what does everyone agree on? What does everyone agree on? That there was a right of way. So we'll say the case over here is not that Reuven says you never had a right of way. First of all, it doesn't even make sense. Of course I had a right of way. How's my accessing my field? So no one's claiming I didn't have the right of way. Just Lamaisa, again, no one knows where it is. So Admon says, we know that everyone knows that I had a right of way. I also know that where was that right of way? Where was the right of way? On one of Reuven's fields. So Admon says, Reuven, give me a right of way. Again, now what Reuven has the choice to do, Rabbi says what? What does Reuven have the choice to do? Decide where the right of way is. So that he does have a right to do. So in other words, he may give me what's considered to be a more inconvenient right of way, but Lamaisa, he's got to give me a right of way. To which the Gemara says, what's the case? Kigon shekifua arba'a b'nei adam me arba ruchos. Oh, it's not one owner of all 4 parcels surrounding the interior one. It's 4 owners. So we'll say, now watch this. This is great. So imagine the scene, right? I come back from my overseas trip, right? I come back, right? I took an extended Pesach vacation. So I go ahead, I come back a couple of months later, right? I don't remember where my right of way is. I go to Ruvain. I say, Ruvain, you're one of the exterior landowners. I need my right of way. What does Ruvain say? Oh, you should talk to Shimon. Right? And it wasn't my field. Right? I go to Shimon. Right? Shimon says, you should talk to Levi. Right? Go to Levi. Levi says, you should talk to Yehuda. Yehuda says, you should talk to Ruvain. And I will say, technically speaking, every single guy could push me off to the other. Right? Because I don't have a defined claim against any of the particular owners. Here's what I know. I know that I have a right of way on one of these 4 fields. I don't know which field. Every single landowner has the ability to push me off. If that's the case, my time in the Admon, what's Admon's logic? So I will say, when you have a case of 4 different owners who acquired their parcel from 4 different people, or even 4 different people who acquired their parcel from one owner, they could deflect my claim. They could legitimately deflect my claim. They're saying, we're not arguing that you have a claim, we're just saying your claim is not on our field. Keep please. So also where this machlokes come up, this is very interesting. I will say, interestingly enough, the machlokes case is as follows. Let's say one guy, Ruvain, bought all 4 surrounding parcels from 4 different owners. Right? So there were 4 owners of 4 parcels. Ruvain now bought all of them. So there's one owner, all 4 parcels. I come back from my overseas trip and demand a right of way. So watch this. Get ready for this. So Admon Savar Matzi Amrle Mikomakom Darchi Gabech. So Admon holds that Allah Lamaisa, I have a right to say that ultimately what? That Allah Lamaisa, listen, Ruvain, you bought all 4 parcels. I have a right of way on one of your parcels. Give me a right of way. And Admon says, I have a right to demand it, and Ruvain has to comply. He could decide where the right of way is, but he has to comply. For Rabbanan, supposed to listen to this. Rabbanan say, Ruvain says to me, listen, buddy, here's the deal. Ish shatakt. If you keep your mouth closed, you keep your mouth closed. V'lo, but if you're going to be difficult, ma'adrona shtar l'marayu. You know what I'm going to do? I'll dissolve the sale. I'll return the parcel to all 4 owners. V'lo matis l'ishta'u yidina b'hadayu. And the truth is, you'll have no claim at all. So essentially, what Ruvain has me at a significant disadvantage. Ruvain says, sure, I'll give you the right of way, but it's going to cost you. I say to Ruvain, cost me, it's like stealing my wallet and asking me to purchase it back and telling me I'll give you a good deal on it. Right? What are you talking about? In other words, what are you talking about? I have the right of way. Ruvain says, listen, you have a choice. You want to be difficult? Be difficult. But if you are, I'm going to return the 4 parcels. I'm going to dissolve the sale, return the 4 parcels to the 4 owners, and you have no claim. You have no claim. Because remember, again, when it's 4 owners on both sides, what do the 4 owners have the ability to do? Right? They could deflect one onto the other, and I'll never get my right of way. He says, or you could deal with me. You're going to pay through the nose, but lamaisa, you're going to get your parcel back. Now, I will say, I want to be clear. This is not condoned behavior. It's just legal behavior, right? I will say, so again, sometimes that which is legal and that which is correct are 2 different things. But again, Ruvain is exploiting the situation, and lamaisa is going to charge me for something that legally is already mine. I will say, what's incredible about this is, you can have a legal right, but you have an inability to execute that right. That's what's happening over here. I have a legal right of way. I just don't have the ability to execute it without actually purchasing a right that's already mine from Ruvain. Okay? So the idea over here is the Gemara says, so says the Gemara, Lema, Rabbi Abba Damar Kirabanan, Rabbi Yirmiyah Damar Ke'almon. So we're trying to link this case ultimately again to the previous case, which was Kamdina or Hadardina. Remember again, let's go back for just a moment. We were dealing with the following case. Shimon passes away. They want to divide up his estate. So Safek says to the sons of Shimon, we're brothers, let's divide up the estate 3 ways. What do the sons of Shimon say? You're not our brother. You're not, we like you, but you're not our brother, at least not for inheritance purposes. The estate is ours. Reuven says, so Suffolk says, what does Suffolk say? No problem. I'm not your brother. Let's just go back to Beis Din, and let me go back and then get the rest of my father's estate. Because remember again, I only got 50% of Reuven's estate. Now that you're saying I'm not your brother, let's reopen that. Let me reclaim the 50% that your father, Shimon, took from me, and we'll call it even. So we'll say that's machlokes now. Do we go back and reopen previously adjudicated cases? Rav says no. Rabbi Yirmiyah says yes. The Gemara wants to suggest Lima, Rabbi Abba Damakar. So we'll say let's align the two cases. Let's say that Rabbi Abba holds like the Rabbanon. Rabbi Yirmiyah holds like Admon. Rabbi Abba Admon. Rabbi Abba says I can hold even like Admon. How so? Ad Kano Kamar Admon Hasam Elimishum Da'amrle Mimanavshach Darki Chad Gabachu. Remember again, I will say the case of the right of way is different because in the case of the right of way, when I return, there is a definitive claim. I will say again, remember the interesting part of the right of way case is what? No one's arguing on what? That I have one, right? No one's arguing that I have. It's not like anyone saying, no, you never had a right of way. They're agreeing I have a right of way. Everyone's just deflecting my claim. But I will say, ultimately, again, in this case, it's this case that halacha l'maisa is a little bit different. In other words, in this case, Suffolk's claim is really unclear. Remember, again, all of these cases, we don't call them Suffolk for no reason, right? In other words, that l'maisa, all of these cases are unclear. It's not a definitive claim. Rabbi Yirmiyah will say, I hold even called Rabbanon. How so? Ad kanol kamer Rabbanon hasam ela mishum da'amar le'i shatakt v'ilo mahadrina shtar lemarayu. Because I will say in this case, remember again, the landowner, Reuven, right, who owns now all 4 parcels, says to me, listen, either keep your mouth closed, or if you don't, I'll dissolve the sale, return the parcels to the 4 owners, and you'll have no claim over anything. And again, I really have no legal recourse against that. Right? There's no legal recourse. So ultimately, I will say, but in this case, halacha l'maisa, you can't necessarily say that. So therefore, I will say, just the Gemara's pointing out is the two cases are not comparable. So I just want to point out first of all, in this particular case, how do we paskin? So we'll say in the 4 parcel case, everything is going to depend as to who we're talking about. In other words, are we talking about 4 owners? Are we talking about 1 owner? We're not going to descend into the halacha l'maisa of that case, but it is a fascinating one because it represents a case where someone could have a legal entitlement, but yet is unable to execute that legal entitlement without potentially buying that which they already own, which is fascinating. And by the way, it's totally legal. It's a totally legal setup. Again, a shtickle extortion, right? It's definitely a little bit of extortion over here. But lamaisa, I don't know if you could say legal extortion because I think that's an oxymoron, right? But lamaisa, sometimes legally you do have the ability to take advantage of people. Certainly not the moral thing to do, but lamaisa, the legal thing to do. I will say, but what I do want to point out is, how do we paskin in that case of Rav versus Rabbi Yirmiyah? I will say, do we reopen cases once they've been settled in Beis Din or not? So I'll say, what I do want to point out is, this also depends sometimes on what kind of case. Like, for example, in capital cases, right? In capital cases, halacha l'maisa, if a Beis Din found someone liable to a death penalty, and they're taking him out to execute him, and witnesses run up and they say, no, we have proof as to his innocence, we'll go back and reopen that. Conversely, by the way, if Beis Din decided that he's innocent and witnesses then show up and say, we have proof to his guilt, we don't open it up. What about in Yerusha? Right? What about in this particular case over here, where, remember again, Shimon dies, right? Sons of Shimon are saying, you're not our brother. Suffolk says, no problem. If you're not our brother, if I'm not your brother, then give me back 50% of my father's estate. So what happens in that case? I will say, the Rambam paskins like Rav, Kamdina. We do not reopen the case. In other words, once Reuven's estate has been dealt with, it's done. And any further disputes between Suffolk and sons of Shimon are kind of looked at their own lens. Now I will say, The resolution to all of these cases is going to be how? Is going to be now. Again, remember, this case of this is going to be Mammon HaMutal B'Safek. We're going to be Cholik. We're going to split. But Lamaisa, the way we paskin is, once the estate has been settled, we do not go ahead and reopen it. I will say, it's also an incredible metaphor for life. How sometimes in life, once something is done, you have to learn to move on. You have to learn to move on. You can't reopen. Sometimes it's human nature to kind of consistently look back and reopen things. Now, is it good to kind of be a retrospective type of person and look back in life to contemplate the things that have occurred? And the answer, of course, is yes. But lemaisa, at a certain point in time, you have to move on. You have to move on. This is true when we look at our own failures. Sometimes people become so obsessed with their failures and their wrong turns in life that it's all they can focus on. And when your past is the only thing you could focus on, then what? Then the mice, again, you can never build your future. I once saw a beautiful mashal. I think I've quoted this before, but a beautiful, beautiful mashal. It's kind of like if you can imagine when you're driving, so you have to check your rear view mirror, right? You always have to check your rear view, what's going on behind you. But if the entire time that you're driving, all you do is look in your rear view mirror, you're going to get into an accident. Because you cannot go ahead and drive forward if all you're focused on is the rear view mirror. And it's an incredibly important metaphor for life. Do you have to check through that? Do you have to learn from your past? Of course. Do you have to grow from your past? Of course. Do you have to remember the mistakes of your past? 100%. Because like I said, that's how I grow. But I can't become stuck in my past, right? And I can't constantly reopen the past. And I can't constantly agonize over the past. We paskin, both in halacha and hashkafa, come dina. Once the case is settled, it's done, and time to move on. Incredible. So we'll say, let's go back there. More cases. Safek v'yavam sheba'u lachlok b'nechsei saba. This is great, by the way. We'll say this is a family that argues a lot over money. I just want to point that out. Let's say, so now listen to this case. So now this is Safek, and Shimon. I remember again, both say, what's the relationship between Safek and Shimon? What's their relationship? We're not sure. Shimon is either what? Safek's father, right? Or uncle. Right, son or nephew, right? Good. So I'll say, that's the relationship. We don't know. So now watch this. I'm sorry. Right, so it'd be always interesting to see today. We could probably resolve these things relatively quickly. But Lamais again, the Gemara they couldn't, of course. So we'll say, now listen to this. So now what happens in this case? The Zayda passes away. We'll call him Yaakov, right? So now Yaakov passes away. So remember again, Yaakov was Reuven and Shimon's father. So now Yaakov passes away. Watch this. So now, what happens? Safek Amar Hai Gavra Bar Misnahu Upalga Didihu. So now watch this. Safek, what's Safek? What does Safek claim? Safek claims, I'm Reuven's son. As Reuven's son, right? Yaakov had two sons, Reuven and Shimon. As Reuven's son, I am entitled to what? 50%, right? My father's portion of Yaakov's estate. So Yava and Shimon says, At Barai Didiat, Veles Midi. Ultimately, again, Shimon says, you're not Reuven's son, you're my son. And as such, what entitlement do you have? What entitlement do you have in Yaakov's estate? And the answer is zero. So we'll say, what's the halacha? So now this is an interesting case. Yavam Vadai. So Habi Yavam Vadai, Safek. So we'll say, in this case, they don't have equal claims. Why? What do we know definitively? That Shimon is Yaakov's son. That we know bevados. Right? Safek, we don't really know whose son he is. So I will say you have a case of a Safek and a Vadai. Right? In this case, Shimon is a Vadai. Shimon is definitely Yaakov's son. Safek, right? Safek maybe is Reuven's son, maybe is Shimon's son. So what's the halacha? I will say in this case, Yavam, Shimon gets everything. Why? Because Ein Safek Motzi Midei Vadai. So I will say, which makes sense, because in this case, as I see, up until now, we've been dealing with both parties have kind of possible claims, but no one has a definitive claim. In this case, Shimon has a definitive claim. He is definitely the son of Yaakov, and Safek cannot make any definitive claim. Therefore, again, Shimon inherits everything. Incredible. Safek b'nei Yavam Shaval Lachlok b'nechsei Saba. So we'll say now, in this case over here, what happened? So we'll say, in this case, Shimon passed away before his father Yaakov, And now Yaakov passes away. So who's coming along? The sons of Shimon and Safek. And they're coming now to distribute or to divide the estate of the Zayda of Yaakov. So what happens? Safek Amarhu Gavra Barmin Suhu. So Safek says, I'm Reuven's son, and therefore I'm entitled to 50% of the estate from Yaakov. So the Gemara says, Upaga Didihu, Ubnei Yavam Amri, Achunaat, Umansa Islacha Bahadan Palga. Right? So I'm sorry, Umisa Mahadan. So we'll say, what do the brothers say? Right? What do the sons of Shimon say? The sons of Shimon say, no, you're our brother. It's incredible, we'll say, right? How suddenly the Achdus comes out. Right? You're our brother. Right? You're our brother. Now we'll say, why? Because remember, if he's not their brother, right? If Safek is Reuven's son, that means Safek gets 50%, and there's only 50% left for the two sons of Shimon to divide. Versus, Lamaise, if what? If they're all three brothers, all three of them get a third. So suddenly again, the sons of Shimon say to Safek, no, you're our brother, we've always been so close. Right? We love you, our brother, and let's all inherit together. So now watch this. How do we deal with this? This is fascinating. Palgud de kamodilahu shakli. So ultimately, again, I will say, so listen to this. So since from Safek's claim, from Safek's perspective, Safek is moda that 50% of Yaakov's estate goes to Shimon's sons. Right? He's moda on that because he's claiming that he's Reuven's son. Right? As Reuven's son, he gets 50% of Yaakov's estate. Shimon's sons should get 50%. So in the 50% that he's moda, that goes to the sons of Shimon. Right? They go to Shakli. I'm sorry. Bahadon palga de kamodilahu Shakli Tilsa de kamodile Shakil. So now listen to this. So Safek is moda that 50% of the estate goes to the sons of Shimon. They take that portion. The sons of Shimon are moda that what? 1/3 of the estate goes to Safek. He takes that. So how much is left? Pashlu Danga. Ultimately, there's 1/6 of the estate, therefore, that's unaccounted for. Have mamon hamotel b'safek v'cholkin. So we'll say that remaining 1/6 ultimately again is considered to be mamon hamotel b'safek, which means mamon that doesn't have a clear owner. No one has a clear legitimate claim to it. And what do we do with that? We split it. So we'll say this case is interesting. Why is this case interesting? Because in this case, each side is being moda that the other side is entitled to something. So because of that, what we do is, okay, if you admit that the other side is entitled, each side gets what the other side agrees to, and the rest, they go ahead and they split. Incredible. Last case, Safek v'yavam b'nichsei Safek, o Saba v'Safek b'nichsei Yavam. Listen to this case, I will say. In this case over here, Saba, this is wild. So I'll say, in this case over here, Safek passed away. Who's coming to divide up Safek's estate? The grandfather, right? The grandfather Yaakov and Shimon. Now I both say they have, or for that matter, Saba v'Safek v'nichsei Yavam. Or we'll say for that matter, the grandfather Yaakov and the Safek, right? The Safek are coming to divide up in the estate of Shimon. Now I will say in this case, remember, in the first case of this, remember again, you have Saba v'Yavam b'nichsei Safek. So I will say in this case over here, Yaakov would claim that what? That Lamaisa, Safek was the son of Reuven. Reuven has no other inheritors. Who does it go to? It goes to the father, right? Shimon would be claiming that ultimately Safek was my son, and therefore the inheritance comes to me. In the second case, Saba v'Safek b'nichsei Yavam, ultimately grandfather would claim that Safek was the son of Reuven, and ultimately again, and Safek would claim that he's the son of Shimon, he should inherit. So I'll say each one is claiming the full inheritance. So the Gemara says, so I'll say, as you begin to see, most of these cases, everyone's coming with this a claim of similar strength, right? They're both coming with quote-unquote legitimate claims. What do we do when two parties both come with legitimate claims to the same pot of money? What do we do? Cholkin, we split it. And I will say, what I do want to point out is, there are some times where people come with competing claims, and you can't determine the veracity of either side, we also have a concept of shetemunach ad shetavo Eliyahu Hanavi. We have a concept of kind of putting money in Beis Din escrow until Eliyahu Hanavi comes, which is another way of saying until we can figure out what to do with it. I'll just point out that is another potential, resolution mechanism of resolution mechanism. Here, what I will point out is we're saying everybody has a legitimate claim. There's no way for us to determine who is correct. Cholkin. The exception to that, Rabbi say, is going to be the case where each side is modeh, that the other side is entitled to something. In that case, halacha l'maisa, everyone gets what the other side agrees they're entitled to. Incredible. Let's say, what a great case. Great case is. Mishnah. Shomeres Yavim shenaflu nechasim. Rabbi say, very interesting case. So watch this. You have a Shomeres Yavim. So we'll say, same situation, right? Reuven and Shimon, two brothers. Reuven passes away, leaves behind a widow, Rachel. Let's say while Rachel is waiting for Shimon, no, she's not pregnant, there's nothing, right? Just a straight, good old Yibum, right? So we'll say now, in this case over here, she's waiting for Shimon to do Yibum or Chalitza. And what happened? Naftali Tilson, she inherits property, or she acquires property. Right now, naflula, Rashi says, me'aviha. Now, naflula usually is a lashon of Yerusha. Usually it's a lashon ultimately of inheritance. So in this case over here, let's say her father passes away, she inherits property. So we'll say, now what's going to be the sheileimah? So who has rights over this property? So listen to this. Modim Beisham Beisel Shumacheres Onosenes. Beisham Beisel both agree she is the sole owner of that property. Even though I both say, again, remember what's driving this? How do we paskin? Yesh zeka. Right? There's a zeka. So there is some type of marital bond that exists between her and Shimon. Nevertheless, when she's waiting for Yibum, any property she acquires is hers and hers alone. Vaharaya, she could buy, she could sell, she could do whatever she wants. Meisa, ma yaseh beksuvasa, uvenechasim nichnasim yotzimima. Now here's what's interesting. What happens if she passes away? So I'll say, so now what it's asking over here is, what happens if she passes away while waiting for Yibum? Right, so now again, nothing happened. She's a Shomeres Yavim. There's a Zeka to Shimon. She passes away. What's the sheilah when she passes away? What's the sheilah? Who inherits her? So the Gemara says, listen to this. Now we'll say, now there are two things. When she passes away, when Rachel passes away, there are two buckets of money. Number one is her ksuva, right? And number two is property she brought into the marriage. Now I will say, we're not getting into this now, Rashi gets into this, but there are two different types of property that she brings into the marriage. There's nichsei melug, nichsei tzon barzel. So we'll say, again, without getting into the distinction between them is immaterial for us right now. The point over here is, halacha l'maisa, what happens to her property? So it says the Gemara, Beis Shammai omrim yachloku yarshei abalim yarshei av. Beis Shammai says, we split. Rashi says, the inheritors of the husband go ahead and split it with the inheritors of a father. Now we'll say, now what that means is like this. Look at Rashi. The safek nesuahi v'zacha hayavam b'chatzi yerusha. So misafek shabal yorish es ishto v'zusha safek nesuahi etzlo v'chi b'palga zachi b'palga. Aval ksuva samod be'shamed b'cheskas habalhi v'lo palgi ba'yar she'av v'taima dekula masdisim farshwar. So let's listen to this. So Beis Shammai says as follows. Beis Shammai says essentially she's bound to two different parties. She's bound to the Yavam. In some way, and she's also bound to her family. So therefore, what does Beis Shammai say? We split, or I should say, Yarshei Habal means the Yavam, right? And ultimately, again, Yarshei Ha'av means her family. So we go ahead and we split up her possessions between her family and the Yavam's family. Beis Hillel says, Nechasim b'cheskasa. Beis Hillel says, no. What we do is we keep property in the chazaka it was in. Meaning what? So the Gemara says, Ksuva b'cheskas yarshei abal. So we'll say in general, who does a ksuva rest with? Right? Liability for a ksuva and the property to secure a ksuva rests with her husband's family. Right? And ultimately, Nechasim hanichnasim v'yotzinima b'cheskas yarshei ha'av. Versus her property stays with her family. So essentially what Beis Hillel says is, keep everything with whoever has the chazaka on it. So ksuva is paid from husband's property. Therefore, again, ksuva should stay with the husband's family. Right? Her property that she brought into the marriage should stay with her family. To which the Gemara says, Kinsa, once Yibum happens, Harehi ki ishto l'chol davar. Ultimately, again, they're like a regular married couple. Ubilvad shetek suva al nichse baila harishon. So I will say, this is actually quite fascinating. Halacha l'maisa, what we say is like this. Once Shimon and Rachel do Yibum, they have a regular marriage, a fully regular marriage. There's only one unique difference in their marriage, is that Rachel's ksuva, right? Remember again, I will say, when you do Yibum, so Shimon doesn't have to write a new ksuva, right? Just like Shimon doesn't have to do another act of kiddushin. Why? Because the way we view Yibum is how? Almost like an extension of Ruvain's marriage. So I will say, because of that legally, Rachel's ksuva is not from Shimon's estate. Who is Rachel's ksuva from? Ruvain's estate. And this is incredibly important, because I will say, normally when you get married, everything and anything you own is encumbered. Everything and anything you own is encumbered. And I will say, that's not just like a metaphorical statement, that's a legal statement. That's in the ksuva. Afilu min galima da kaspai. This is what was unique. There is no other lien that exists in halacha like the lien of a ksuva. Because the lien of a ksuva devolves upon everything. Movable property, real property, everything. Nothing else in halacha exists like this. So what's unique is when Shimon does Yibum, his property remains unencumbered to the ksuva. I both say this is very important, like legally, like halachically, it's very important, because generally, I both say, when you're buying real estate, you're buying anything from someone, what do you look for? What do you look for? Liens and encumbrances. So generally, by the way, when you buy property from a married man, just understand there is a lien against that. There's a ksuva lien against that. The beautiful part, Shimon's property is totally unencumbered because Rachel's ksuva is against Reuven's estate, not his. Beautiful. To which the Gemara says, Maishna reisha de lo pligi, umaishna sefer de pligi. I will say, why is it in the first case where Rachel, when she's waiting for Yibum, and let's say her father passes away and she inherits, no one disagrees that halach l'maisa she can do whatever she wants with the property. Yet, in the case, ultimately, where she passes away, suddenly there's a machlokas how to dispose of her property. Right? Machlokas Hashem Beisilo. Why is there no machlokas in the Reisha? Amar Ula. Reisha de nafla kishi arusa, Seifa de nafla kishi nesua. So Ula says something very interesting. Ula says the first case in the Mishnah was where ultimately, again, she was widowed from Erisin. So because ultimately, again, she was widowed from Erisin, Sahalacha Lamaisa, again, Halacha Lamaisa, a husband never gains rights in his wife's property until Nissan anyway. Right? So we spoke about the idea that even if a wife retains title, husband gets payros, gets usage. Those rights only come about in Nissan. We're talking about in the Reisha case where she became a widow from Erisin, in which case Reuven never had rights in her property. So of course now when she's waiting for Yibum, she felt Yibum from a state of Erisin, the Yavam has no rights in her property either. That's why whatever she gets, whatever she buys, sells, is all totally legal. The Seifa, on the other hand, when she was widowed from a state of Nisuin, so she was coming off a state of marriage already where her husband had entitlements in her property. V'kasavra ula, zekas arusa, Osa Safek Arusa, Zekas Amabez, Zekas Nisua, Osa Safek Nisua. So the idea over here is, and this is quite fascinating. Ula says that essentially, this is fascinating, Zika mirrors the state of marriage. So in other words, if a woman was married, if a woman only had Erisin, let's say Rachel had Erisin with Ruvain, and then she was widowed, so now she has a Safek Erisin Zika with Shimon. If she was widowed ultimately from Nisuin, she has a Safek Nisuin Zika with Shimon. I will say the Lashon of Safek just means Zika only creates, we've seen this many times before, Zika only creates like a partial marital bond. The way we're calling that partial marital bond is we're calling that what? We're calling that a Safek. We're calling that a Safek. Good. Calling that a Safek. So we'll say, I'm sorry. So the Gemara says Safek. So the Gemara says, Zekas, Safek Nisua, Ose Safek Nisua. Zekas Arusa, Ose Safek Arusa. So we'll say, ultimately, again, it's very interesting. So therefore, when a woman is widowed from Erisin, so that means the Zika. So let's say again, Reuven died after doing Erisin with Rachel. Rachel now falls to Shimon in Yibum. That Zika that she has with Shimon is only a zika that's equivalent of a erisin, right? So zekas, erisin, and I will say the ramification of that zeka, essentially creates like a state of suffix erisin. Suffix erisin. Watch this. So ultimately, again, because halacha l'maisa, if you would say that it creates a vada case of erusin, would Beis Hillel agree that she has the right to go ahead and sell property? Vatnan, we learned. We both say in general case, if let's say, again, regular case of marriage, Ruvain did erusin with Rachel, and now Rachel inherits property. Beis Shammai omrim timkar. Beis Shammai says during erusin she has the right to sell property. Beis Hillel omrim lo simkar. Beis Hillel says she doesn't have the right to sell property. And Elu ve'elu modim, Elu modim both agree. Shemachra v'nasna kayim, that if she went ahead and she did sell property, then what? It works. But I will say, but what do you see from here? El shmamina zekas arusa osa safek arusa. They both say, so this is very important. So let's just take a step back over here. So here's what's happening. The way we're framing, I both say, remember again, what was the first case in the Mishnah? First case in the Mishnah was, Ruvain passes away, leaves behind a wife, no children, Rachel now, and a surviving brother, Shimon. So now what's happened? Rachel's going to do Yibam with Shimon, but nothing's happened yet. She's what's called a Shomeres Yavam. In this state, meanwhile, what's occurred? Her father passed away. Rachel's father passed away. Let's say she's the only child. She is the sole inheritor. So she, Baruch Hashem, now inherits the entire estate. She decides, you know what? I want to sell off the property. She sells off the property. Okay? The Mishnah says, fine. Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel agree. What she did is no problem. No problem. To which the Gemara says, okay, so why is that? Why is that? So what the Gemara suggests is as follows. So first of all, the way we set up the case is, Rachel was widowed from erisin. And now, Bosai, essentially what Ulu is suggesting is that Zika mirrors, Zika is a watered down state, a weaker state of the marriage from which the woman emerged. Okay, watch this. In other words, that halacha l'maisa, if Rachel was widowed from erisin, so the Zika essentially creates a state of what we'll call Safek erisin. Safek erisin. Then I will say not vada erisin, Safek erisin. So whatever a woman could do in a state of Safek erisin, and whatever would be binding in a state of Safek erisin, is binding when she's a Shomeres Yavam for that type of Zika of erisin as well. So Zekas erisin, essentially I will say, so again, so therefore halacha l'maisa, in a case of Safek erisin, if a woman were to sell off property, the sale would be binding. Therefore, in this case over here, where she's a Shomeres Yavam, from a marriage of erisin, the transaction is binding. But I will say, what Ula is teaching us is a very profound yesod, which is, Zika mirrors the stage of marriage from which she was widowed, but the Zika is a weaker state of that marriage. So if she was widowed from erisin, the Zika is a watered down form, what we call a weaker form of erisin. She's widowed from Nisuin, and let's go into that case now. So Gemara says, Zekas Nesua osa Safek Nesua. Similarly, again, I will say, if she's widowed from Nisuin, ultimately, again, therefore, when she's a Shomeres Yavam, that Zeka is like a Zeka of a Safek Nisuin. How do we know this? Because ultimately, I will say, if you held that a woman who came out of a Nisuin marriage and now is in a state of Zika, if you say that Zika creates Vaday Nisuin, Beis Shammai on Miachloku, Yarshei Abal and Yarshei Av, would Beis Shammai say that in the case where she dies, the inheritors of her husband and her family should split the estate? Vatnan, we learned, Naflu lo nechasim mishenises, if a woman inherits property after she got married, Elu v'elu modim, everyone agrees, Shemachra v'nasna, that if she sold the property, Shabal motzi mi'ad l'kuchos. See, Rav say, during marriage, a husband has peros, has usage rights over property, and therefore, if a wife unilaterally sells property during the marriage, a husband has a right to what? Come back and extract it and take it back. So, Rav say, the fact that the Mishnah says that in the case where she passes away, right? Again, she was widowed from Nisuin. She's now waiting for Yibum. Now she passes away. What does Beis Shammai say? Beis Shammai says, split the estate. Split the estate. The fact that they're saying split the estate tells us that what? That ultimately it's safek nisuin. Because if it was vaday nisuin, Beis Shammai would say there's a sole inheritor. Who's the sole inheritor? The husband's family. Rather, what do you see from here? That the zika of nisuin creates ultimately again a state of safek nisuin. So we'll say a really important yisod that Ula is conveying to us. Number one, zika mirrors the actual state from which zika is a lesser form of the state. Zika is a lesser form, a weaker form of the stage of marriage from which she was widowed. So therefore, again, if she was widowed from Erisin, Zika is a weaker form of Erisin. What we call the weaker form is what? Safek. If she was widowed from Nisuin, Zika is a weaker form of Nisuin. And that's what's unfolding in our Mishnah. That's what's unfolding in our Mishnah. So for example, when a woman is in a Vadai state of Erisin, if she were to inherit property, right, and she were to come and ask us, can I sell this property? We would tell her what? We would tell her what? No. Beis Hillel says, no, you should not go ahead and sell it. Ex post facto, if she sold it, does the sale work? And the answer is, yes. Halacha, yes, it works. In this case over here, because the Zika, when she's widowed from Erisin, now she's in a Zika state, the Zika is a lesser form of Erisin. That lesser form of Erisin allows her to do what? Proactively sell property as she wants. Good, incredible. So we'll say, Amalei Rabba. Rabba says, well, if that's the case, Ademiflagi bigufa ula achamisa. Instead of going and arguing about her, about literally again her death and what we do with her estate after she dies, liflagu bechaya ula peros. Why don't you go ahead and argue about a case where she's still alive, halacha l'maisa, she's still alive, and ultimately again the argument is regarding peros, regarding usage, to which the Gemara says, Ela Amar Rabba, Idi v'idi dinafla kishinisua. So we'll say, Rabba wants to suggest no. Rabba disagrees with Ula. Rabba says both cases in the Mishnah, the Reisha and the Sefer, are talking about a case of a woman who was widowed from Nisuin. Now watch this. The Gemara says, V'zekas Nisua, Oses Safek Nisua. But I will say, interestingly enough, he's going to agree with Ula's principle, which is Zika creates a weakened form of the stage of marriage from which she was widowed. Namely, so if she was widowed from Nisuin, ultimately, again, Zika creates a weaker form of Nisuin. Now watch this. Reisha di'ihi kaima havela ihi vadai ve'inhu safek. So I'll say, in the Reisha, where she's alive, so remember again, she's a vadai, he's a safek. Meaning what? That will say again, she's a vadai that she owns the property, he's a safek. Remember, why is he a safek? Because again, remember, Zika creates a state of safek nisuin. And therefore again, even though we would tell her don't sell the property, if she did, she has the right. Why? Ain't safek motzi midei vadai. Ultimately again, because she has the definitive claim, he only has the safek claim. Seifa de mesa, in the second case of the Mishnah where she passed away, halalu ba'in lirish, v'halalu ba'in lirish v'yachloku. Each side, the husband's family and quote-unquote her father's family, i.e. her family, have equal claim, and therefore the only way to deal with that case is how? Yachloku, we split it. So I just want to point out, all that Rabbah is doing over here, Rabbah's not disagreeing with Ula's principle. Namely that what? That Zika is a weaker form of the stage of marriage from which she was widowed. He's not disagreeing with that principle. He's only disagreeing about how Ula framed the cases. Ula framed the Reisha as talking about where she was widowed from Erisin, Seifa she was widowed from Nisuin, and all Ula saying is that no, they're both Nisuin. Eis ve'abaye says, Ula Beis Shammai, ain't safek motzi midei vadai. Is that true? That according to Beis Shammai, ultimately a safek cannot be motzi from a vadai? In other words, that if there's two claims, one is a safek, one is a vadai, that the vadai always wins. Listen to this case. Nafal abayis alav v'al aviv, alav v'al morishav, v'hayu alav ksuvas isha ubalchov. Rabbi said, listen to this fascinating case. Let's say a house fell. Rabbi said, you know what, actually, we're going to stop over here for today. We'll pick, oh my gosh, a lot to do tomorrow. Okay, we're going to start in Yevamos Hashem again tomorrow, 5:45. Tomorrow we're going to catch up. It's going to be a catch-up day tomorrow before Yom Tov. Yevamos Hashem. Rabbi said, we'll get to this next case. But again, just understand now we're going to transition into the case of Safek Motzi Midei Vadai. That ultimately, again, can a Safek claim go ahead and override a Vadai claim. Fascinating, again, for Yibum, or for this case, Shomeres Yabam. Also fascinating in general in these legal cases. Pick up here tomorrow. Shkach, Avosai. Have a good day, everyone. Good morning, Jerry. Good morning, Dr. Grant. Have a great day. Jerry made my day. Rabbi, Jerry, move to the side for a second. Just move to the side. I just want to see. Mamish. Okay. At least I could see Yerushalayim. Thank you. Thank you. What time is it? 7. He needs people now? Now?
7 o'clock.